Hey guys, so in this video we're going to be talking about the 4 best evidence-based supplements that you can take to improve muscle performance, muscle recovery, and muscle growth. So let's get right into it. Hey guys, my name is Zach Allison and welcome to Nutrition Library, your trusted resource for evidence and research in the field of nutrition. If you haven't already, I would definitely recommend hitting that red subscribe button below this video and then turning the notifications on by tapping that little bell icon so that you don't miss any of our upcoming content. Thank you guys so much. So in this video, we're gonna be taking a deep dive into the main supplements and ingredients of supplements that you can take to improve muscle growth and muscle gain. So whether you are a novice or beginner lifter just trying to figure out what supplements you need to be taking, or if you're an experienced lifter and are just trying to make sure that you're taking the right supplements and aren't spending money on things that don't really work, this is definitely the video for you. Also, make sure you guys hang around to the end of the video where we're going to be going through our honorable mentions that didn't necessarily make it to our top 4, but do have some promising evidence behind them for their effect on muscle growth. And so for the sake of this video, I'm going to go ahead and assume that you guys are already taking care of some of the more basic things like calorie intake, protein intake, and proper training, because without those 3 things, even these supplements will lose their effect in muscle growth. So with that being said, number 1 on our list has got to be protein. And it's number 1 on our list today because it is by far the most basic need of your body in order to cause muscle growth. Most of you guys know that muscle growth doesn't actually happen in the gym. It actually happens when you're at the dinner table and when you're asleep. So you're breaking down muscle in the gym and you're actually building it when you're outside of the gym. And so without sufficient amounts of protein in your diet, your body doesn't have the building blocks that it needs in order to build the muscle tissue that it wants to build in response to the training stimulus that you give it on a weekly basis. So most experts recommend that you get anywhere between 0.7 to 1.1 grams of protein per pound of lean body mass. And so this is kind of like the general accepted consensus within the scientific literature and community right now. Now, obviously it varies depending on the training stimulus, your age, and there's so many other factors that go into it, but by and large, 0.7 to 1.1 grams of protein per pound of lean body mass is going to take care of your daily protein needs. A protein supplement actually isn't a magic bullet when it comes to building muscle. You actually don't need a protein supplement if you're getting enough protein through your diet. However, protein supplementation just makes it more convenient to get your daily protein needs without having to carry around a pound of meat in your backpack everywhere you go. When it comes to the type of protein that you're going to be looking at getting, you're going to want to try to stick to just the basic classic whey protein. Now, if you do have a little bit more money that you want to spend to get something better, I would recommend getting something like a whey isolate as opposed to something like a whey concentrate. So your whey isolate is actually going to be better at being absorbed into the bloodstream and transported to the muscles quicker. A whey isolate is going to be super quick at raising blood levels of amino acids and then transporting those amino acids into the muscle cells where they can then begin to build the building blocks of muscle tissue. And then again, if you have even more money to spend, I would even look into something like a whey casein mixture. There is some research that suggests that there may be a higher anabolic response within your body to a mixture of a quick and slow digesting protein. All right, number 2 on our list today is creatine, and there really isn't a more researched supplement on our list today than creatine. even more so than protein itself. Now, the only reason I didn't put creatine as number one is because protein is just the essential building block of muscle tissue, and so without it, even creatine can't do its job properly in helping to build muscle mass. However, with that being said, there is a ton of evidence and a ton of research done on creatine and its effectiveness in helping to improve muscle performance and enhance muscle recovery to aid in muscle gain. Creatine has been shown in clinical trials to positively influence power output, anaerobic running capacity, muscular endurance, lean mass gains, cognitive function, glucose tolerance, hormonal function, fatigue resistance, hydration status, VO2 max, and symptoms of aging. And so honestly, creatine isn't just one of the most well-researched supplements for muscle building, it's also one of the most researched supplements, period. And so this is why I actually recommend creatine intake, not just for people that are athletic and are providing their bodies with a training stimulus, but also just to anyone that's looking to increase their general health status. Now, creatine does this in several different ways, but the two primary ways that creatine causes all of these health benefits is, one, that it helps to produce energy on the cellular level. So without going too far deep into all of the roles that creatine has in the body, I will say that creatine does help your mitochondria in the cell produce ATP, and ATP is really the most basic form of energy in your body. And so when you have a higher saturation, specifically muscle saturation, of creatine in your body, it helps the muscles to produce energy in a more efficient way, which is going to increase power output, increase endurance, and because of that, increase this training stimulus that your body can then respond to in increased muscle growth. So the second way that creatine aids in muscle growth is actually by drawing water into the muscle cells. And it's actually one of the most immediate noticeable effects of creatine, because there will be a noticeable swelling of the muscle tissue within about a week's time, especially if you choose to do a loading phase, which isn't necessary, however, will speed up your results while using creatine. And once that water is there, it actually causes a hydration for the muscle cells, making it easier for the muscle fibers to actually contract. Now, when it comes to the type of creatine that you want to take, I would definitely just recommend sticking to regular old creatine monohydrate. There are other forms out there like creatine hydrochloride and creatine ethyl ester that might have some evidence behind them in being better than creatine monohydrate. However, they just can't stack up to the amount of evidence that creatine monohydrate has behind it. And creatine monohydrate is by far the cheapest form of creatine. So the price increase that you get with creatine hydrochloride and ethyl ester really doesn't outweigh the benefits that it may or may not provide. Number 3 on our list today is citrulline, L-citrulline. And so L-citrulline is simply an amino acid that is found in high amounts in things like watermelon, which is where it actually gets its name from. Citrulline has been clinically shown to reduce exercise-related fatigue, reduce muscle soreness, increase training volume, increase blood flow, exercise-induced growth hormone release, and increase muscle oxygenation. And the primary way which citrulline actually provides all these benefits is through boosting nitric oxide. Arginine has typically been used in order to boost nitric oxide in the blood because of arginine's ability to be readily converted into nitric oxide. However, citrulline has been shown to actually raise arginine levels better than taking arginine itself. And so when you take citrulline, citrulline actually goes to your kidneys then convert it into arginine, and then arginine then gets converted into nitric oxide by an enzyme in the bloodstream. And so if you're looking to increase nitric oxide in your blood, citrulline remains the most effective supplemental option in order to do so. So once that arginine gets converted into nitric oxide in the blood, that nitric oxide actually expands the blood vessels and increases blood flow throughout your body and will increase oxygen uptake into the muscle cells, as well as carrying other nutrients to your muscles. Now, it can also aid in what bodybuilders typically call the pump in the gym. And so when nitric oxide is able to dilate the blood vessels and increase blood flow to the muscles, it actually increases the amount of blood that gets into the muscles, and therefore giving the muscles a more fuller feel and look, which again can make exercise a little bit more enjoyable. And so this can cause actually increased workload, which therefore increases the amount of damage to the muscle cells, which can then actually increase muscle protein synthesis after your workout, which is theoretically where some of the benefits of citrulline come from. So when it comes to the form of citrulline that you want to take, there's primarily two different forms of citrulline. One is just regular L-citrulline, which is simply just the amino acid citrulline. And then the other popular form of citrulline is something called citrulline malate. And so that's simply just citrulline and a malic acid molecule combined together. And it's possible that there might be some extra benefits with that malic acid molecule there. However, there's not a ton of research and a lot of it's kind of theoretical. And so I tend to personally stick to just simple L-citrulline because it's a little bit more versatile, because the malic acid is so tart and sour, which I typically like the flavor of. However, if I'm just wanting to put some citrulline in my protein shake or put some in maybe even coffee in the morning with some collagen protein, putting a sour substance in there really isn't conducive to good flavor. Now, a clinical dose of citrulline is right around 6 grams, and so if you're doing more of the citrulline malate, you're gonna wanna get a little bit more than that 6 grams, simply because the 6 grams that might be listed of citrulline malate really isn't 6 grams of citrulline. There is that malic acid there again, so you're gonna be wanting to shoot more around the 8-gram range. However, if you are doing just regular citrulline, 6 grams will be more than enough for at least athletic performance. Now, if you're wanting to take L-citrulline for just general health purposes, there is some research that maybe just 3 grams might do the trick in helping to increase blood flow for just general health purposes. So our last supplement on our list today, but certainly not least, is caffeine. So caffeine is really one of the more popular ingredients specifically for pre-workouts because of its very noticeable effects on the central nervous system. Caffeine is a molecule that is found naturally in things like coffee and tea and cocoa. However, for supplementation purposes, is generally made synthetically in a lab and sold as caffeine anhydrous. Caffeine has been clinically shown to increase running capacity, increase power output, aerobic exercise performance, fat oxidation, reaction time, exercise-induced testosterone levels, training volume, oxygen uptake, blood flow, and increased thermogenesis. Now, caffeine does this through its primary effects on adenosine receptors. Adenosine is a neurotransmitter that's in your body that actually builds up throughout the day. And so once it reaches its kind of peak in the evening time and it begins to bind to the adenosine receptors in your body, it kind of helps to produce the onset of sleep, along with things like melatonin in your body. And so by blocking the adenosine receptors, caffeine is actually a very, very potent wakefulness agent. And so once it binds to the adenosine receptors, it actually causes a cascade of events physiologically within your body where it begins to upregulate and cause the release of things like adrenaline, norepinephrine, and epinephrine, which are adrenaline. It increases things like dopamine, serotonin, glutamate, and acetylcholine. And so all of these are really kind of more of your excitatory neurotransmitters in the body, excluding things like serotonin. However, in kind of tandem with these other neurotransmitters, it kind of produces a noticeable stimulation for the consumer, which is why caffeine is readily looked at as the most used drug in the entire world. And so to experience some of the ergogenic benefits that you can get from caffeine, the dosage range is right around that 100 to 500 milligram range, with the higher end of the range actually producing more ergogenic benefit. However, with that higher end of the spectrum, you will begin to see more side effects like anxiety and kind of some mobility, like twitching and stuff like that. Which is why a lot of companies have begun to put things like theanine in their pre-workouts, which is going to help with the anxiety that is onset with caffeine. Caffeine doesn't necessarily have to be supplemented. You can consume it in sufficient amounts in dietary drinks like coffee and tea. However, consuming it in that fashion is a little bit less reliable when it comes to dosing, which is why if you are trying to really be particular with your caffeine usage and know exactly how much you're taking, I would recommend sticking to something like a caffeine anhydrous or a pre-workout or energy supplement that has a specific amount of caffeine anhydrous in it. I personally stick to coffee just because of the antioxidant effects that you get with the coffee. However, I do know people that like the convenience of being able to take a caffeine anhydrous pill or take it within a pre-workout before they work out. And so that's it for our list today. However, I did promise you guys a list of honorable mentions that didn't necessarily make it on the top 4, however, do have a good amount of evidence to suggest that they might be helpful in helping to build muscle mass. And so the first honorable mention that we have on our list today is actually a class of compounds called adaptogenic herbs. And so these would include things like ashwagandha, rhodiola, Panax ginseng, Eleuthero, and cordyceps mushrooms. These are all adaptogenic herbs. They're gonna help your body adapt to stress. So obviously, exercise is a form of stress, and so there is some evidence emerging that some of these herbs could aid in helping your body to adapt to the stress of exercise, either by increasing performance or by aiding in recovery. Our second honorable mention is BCAAs, and the only reason I didn't include this in the top 4 or 5 is because most people that are consuming enough protein within their diet and through things like whey protein and casein do not need to supplement with branched chain amino acids. However, I would give this caveat: if you are performing exercise in a fasted state or are regularly going through periods of fasting and not consuming any calories or any food. However, you are also at the same time trying to put on muscle and are willing to kind of forego some of the benefits of fasting by taking something like a branched chain amino acid, you might benefit from taking a branched chain amino acid because it's going to provide things specifically like leucine, which is your most anabolic protein amino acid. So again, BCAAs really aren't for everybody, but if you are doing fasted exercise and are willing to forego some of the benefits of things like autophagy in your fast for the purposes of gaining muscle periodically, I would recommend looking into getting a branched chain amino acid. Our third honorable mention today is BetaAlanine, and again, there's a ton of research behind this as being an effective ergogenic aid in improving athletic performance. However, for most people, you aren't working out or doing reps long enough to require the need of beta-alanine's effects. And so a lot of the research is pointing to needing to go 1 or even 2 minutes before the effects of beta-alanine kick in, just because of what it actually does. However, for those of you like maybe high school students, middle school students, or even college athletes that are on the field or on the court and are kind of looking for an edge to reduce burn or lactic acid buildup in your muscles to help increase performance, beta-alanine would be a perfect fit for you. Thanks for watching to the very end of the video. Again, please consider hitting that red subscribe button down below and definitely click that little bell next to it so you can make sure to get all of our upcoming content. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. If you'd like any further resources or some links to purchase some of the supplements that were talked about in today's video in bulk, go ahead and check out the description down below.